today we are here to talk about correlation. So far we've talked about what it looks like when you have one variable. Now we're going to talk about what it looks like when you have two variables. In this graph I made, we've got the movie's length in minutes, that's our first variable, and the movie's rating in stars, that's our other variable. So you can see here, as the movie is very short, they have some higher scores, but as the movie gets longer, those scores get lower and lower. You can imagine that I can draw right through the middle with half the dots above and half the dots below a line. When that line has a negative slope, that's a negative correlation. So this is a negative correlation, but if it looked more like this, here I see short movies have a low score and longer movies have a higher score. That line has a positive slope, so this would be a positive correlation. So, if I were to look at a number that I could say ranks how well these two variables go together, that would be my correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficients are always between -1 and 1. It's never higher than 1, it's never lower than -1. The letter that we give the correlation coefficient is R. A score of +1 is a perfect positive correlation. That means if the x variable increases by 1, then the y value increases by 1. A score of -1 is a perfect negative correlation. That means that if the x variable goes up by 1, then the y variable goes down by 1. A score of 0 is no relationship. If the x variable goes up by 1, we have no idea what the y variable is going to do. So if we look at some examples, looking at these three graphs, my first one here, I have these points on my graph. There is no relationship between those dots. I have long movies with high and low ratings. I have short movies with high and low ratings. So when I have no relationship, my R is going to be close to 0. In my next graph, I have these points. So you can see as the movie gets longer, most of the ratings go up, but not all. See, we went up and then down, up and then down, up and then down. So I have a positive-ish trend, which means that it's probably an R value close to positive 0.5 because it's going up, but it's not a perfect fit. And then lastly, in my last graph, I have these points. So every time the movie gets a little bit longer, their rating goes a little bit up. That is a almost perfect correlation, which means R is going to be close to 1. Now, if we look at some negative examples, over here again, I have these points. there is no relationship between the length and the rating. The long movies have high and low points. The short movies have high and low points. And they don't, if you look at them as a whole, there is no trend line. So my R value would be close to 0. Now over here, I have these points in my next graph. Mostly, as the movie gets longer, the rating gets lower. Not perfect, so it would be close to negative 0.5. And then lastly, over here, I have these points. Every time the movie gets longer, the rating gets worse. That means my R value is close to negative 1. And that is the end of correlation day 1.